Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Ziad and today we are going to see together a Symfony component called the LDAP component. According to Symfony docs, the LDAP component provides a means to connect to an LDAP server, Open LDAP or Active Directory. So this component will allow us to connect to an LDAP server. Here I have an online LDAP test server that is available for us thanks to this website here, Forum SIS. It contains a group of mathematicians and a group of scientists. Within these groups we can find users such as Riemann, Gauss for mathematicians, and Tesla and Newton, for example, and Einstein for scientists. So the credentials of this server are available here. We have the host and we have the port number and then the bind DN, and the password would be always password. So it's whether for admin user or for other users, it's password for simplicity. So in our case, we are going to connect to this LDAP server and list the users of all the scientists group, and then we are going to list the details of the Tesla user. So let's get started. The first step would be to install this component. We are going to use this component in a standalone way, so no need to install a Symfony project. So we are going to simply create a folder called, let's call the folder LDAP standalone, and then let's cd to this folder, and then finally we are going to require this component over here, which is Symfony LDAP. So we are going to execute this simple command over here, compose require Symfony LDAP, and then we will have a vendor folder containing all the dependencies of this component. The next step will be opening this folder with our IDE, which is PHP Storm. Alright, so I opened my project with PHP Storm, and here I have it on the left hand, and then on the right hand I have my test server. I needed to get some information like the credentials, and then to see also the list of groups and users that we are going to get. So let's get started. The first step would be to create a new directory called src, and then within this src we are going to create a file called a PHP file called ldap.php, for example, ldap simply, and then PHP Storm will add the PHP extension for me. Then within this code we are going to require once, and then the current directory, and then the parent, enable to reach the vendor, and then autoload.php. And starting from this point over here we can use all the components downloaded by Composer in the vendor directory. So the first step would be to define variables for the server, for LDAP server credentials. I'm going to copy them. They would be for the host, it's ldap.forumsys.com. For the port number, it's the default, so I'm not copying it. And for the bind DN, it's this string over here that I have already copied, which is this one over here, and then the password will be password. So these are the credentials needed to establish a connection to LDAP server. Then to be able to connect to LDAP, we are going to create a variable called LDAP, which will be containing an LDAP, which is a Symfony component LDAP, an LDAP class, and then create. And this create over here takes the first argument is the adapter, which is phpExt, meaning that we are going to use PHP extension as adapter. And then the second argument will take a list of parameters. We are going to specify only the host over here, because that's the main piece of the puzzle needed. So host, and we should be okay to bind our connection with the DN that is available over here and the password. So if we do LDAP bind, and then we give it the DN as first argument and then the password as a second argument, we should be able to establish a connection to the server, and then we will be achieving our first step, which is connecting to the server. In order to test this code, we are simply going to execute this PHP code over here using the PHP command line. So here in PHP Storm, I can open up a terminal just by clicking on terminal. Otherwise, if you don't have that, you have just to open a terminal and then type in whatever command that you want to do. So I'm going back to PHP Storm over here and we'll be typing PHP and LDAP.php, and I'm getting an error saying that the adapter PHPX is not found. Why? Because it is not named PHPX, rather it's XT-LDAP, and it's available in the Symfony component. If you are wondering, it should be somewhere here. Yes, XT-LDAP. So if I re-execute again my command, I don't have an error, which is a good sign, because otherwise the Symfony will say that we can't connect to the server. We can test that by adding simply an X, for example, to the host, and then you'll have Symfony saying that can't connect to LDAP server. So you can further test that if you want by adding an X to password, for example, and leaving the host okay, and we should see the same. Yeah, it's almost the same error, but invalid credentials, so we don't have the right credentials. And then if we leave it as it is, we won't have an error, meaning that it's okay and we have established connection. Now let's try to list all the items in, let's go back to our LDAP test server, and we are going to list all the items in the scientist group. So to do that, we have to do an LDAP query, and it will be like this: query equals LDAP query, and then we will give it this dn over here, and then for the query itself it will be this one. So if we simplify this line, that means that we are looking for scientists inside our LDAP. Let's execute our query. To do so, we'll simply execute query execute, and then we will store that into results variable, and then we can for each on this results variable. So for each results as result, and we are going to dump our result here. In order for us to use this dump function over here, we need to install a Symfony component called PHP var dumper. So let's go to a terminal and then cd to LDAP standalone. We should not be in *c. We should go a level higher in order for us to be in the same level with vendor. And then what we are going to do is simply composer require Symfony var dumper, and composer will download that component for us, and then we will be able to use this component a dump in our code. So let's try to dump this. Let's cd again to src in order to be able to execute our command. Let's execute php ldap.php and see what we are going to get as a result of this query over here, which is, if we recall that, which is simply LDAP query, and then we are going to query in this domain content here our organizational unit scientists, which means that we are looking for the scientist in our LDAP, which should be this list over here. So let's execute our command, and yes, we do have a result, and then we have the attributes here having unique number and the list of users, which are Einstein, Galileo, Tesla and Newton, which is the list over here. So it is good for the second step, which is listing the users of this group. Now let's adapt our query and list the details of Tesla users. So instead of getting organizational unit scientist over here, we are going to query by UID. So it's UID over here. So I'm going to do UID equals Tesla, and then we should be seeing the, if I dump here the result, I should see all the attributes of the Tesla user, which should be some information about it. So yeah, here I have UID Tesla, and then I have the CN, which is the common name Nikola Tesla, and then the short name is Tesla UID, the number, which is not the right number, I suppose, of Tesla, and then the mail of Tesla, which is tesla@ldapforumsys.com, which is obviously not the right mail for Tesla. So that's it for this video. I hope that you have enjoyed playing a little bit with the LDAP component, and see you in next videos to come.